Let's see if my humming in the background actually could hit a copyright. What do you think? You think if I sang a song on here well enough, it would hit the copyright? I think it would. But I think that's based on words. I don't think it's based on tune. If I said enough of those words, copyright hit. Even if I sang them. That's what I'm thinking. Because you know what? We're always thinking here in the classroom. I don't care if it sounds like it's nonsense to you. I don't care. I don't care if you don't believe me, what I said about that video being me and your dad. I don't care if you don't believe me. Why would I care if you don't believe me? What would you know anyway about our starring relationship? What would you know about it? Nada. Nothing. Zero. Zilch. But if you were paying attention, you would know it's day 180 of the classroom. We are here on April 15th. That's tax day. Right there. Burning through our dollars. Let's see how many taxes you get after my show. MFers. Huh? Let's see how many taxes you get for doing shit with this country. Let's see. I'm not telling you not to pay your taxes. Don't come on here looking for trouble. I saw you get on here, you come on here, then all of a sudden you pop off 10 minutes later, but really it says 3 seconds later. Yeah, whatever. 2 people, 3 people, whatever. I see ya. Don't you worry about it. I'm being Catholic then, which influences how I think now. Very suspiciously, I might say. Reading room, we are on day number 7 of Kerry Kennedy's Being Catholic Now. Thanks for joining me. We are here. Let's see what happens with the click. We're going to read from the excerpt from Nancy Pelosi. I happen to think that's, active liberal thinking progressives have really gotten a bad rap underneath this dark umbrella of traditionalism, which has brought back archaic thinking about rights and morality. With for sure, archaic thinking in that they are white supremacist thinking, right? A few hold the knowledge ball. Stop holding your balls. That's what I'm saying. Nancy Pelosi, Being Catholic Now. That's what it's kind of like. Balls out to the walls. As the highest ranking elected woman in American history, Nancy Pelosi, born March 26, 1940, broke the marble ceiling to become the first woman to serve as Speaker of the House of Representatives in 2007. She is second in the line of presidential succession. When my mom asked if I wanted to be a nun, I said I'd rather be a priest. We grew up in a devoutly Catholic, deeply patriotic home where we were proud of our Italian-American heritage and very committed to the Democratic Party. I was the youngest of 6 and the only girl. My mother thought that the most wonderful way to profess your faith if you were a girl was to become a nun. The nun were always wonderful, but the power was with the priest. I always thought that nuns should be able to be priests. That's one of the things that the Catholic Church is going to have to face. We profess our faith and then we act upon it. One way we do this is through public service. In our case, the manifestation was the Democratic Party. The Gospel of Matthew really sounded like a platform for the Democrats. I have always believed that. It is why people consider me a liberal. I'm not that liberal in my thinking. I read this book and I feel a connection to every word on the page pretty much, except for Bill Maher, interestingly enough. But yeah, I'm very liberal. I'm thought of as being liberal, progressive thinker, and I'm sorry, liberals, Democrats are built on helping the poor, period. Whether or not it still exists, whether or not it has been perverted and because of the union, all kinds of things, yes, true, but it is the party of the Beatitudes, faux show. When I became a mother, I could see that if I wanted the best possible future for my children, other children would have to have greater opportunities. I saw that as an extension of faith and family and then politics. That if I wanted the best possible future for my children, other children would have to have greater opportunities. How unselfishly insightful is that? As I approached the problem on the day I was nominated to be speaker, someone said to me, "Your parents would be so proud." I thought, I guess so, but my parents did not raise me to be Speaker of the House. They raised me to be holy. It makes me want to cry because, come on, who doesn't want to be able to say about themselves, "I'm holy"? Who doesn't want to be able to say that about themselves? "I'm holy"? Leave me alone, you MFers. I'm holy. I'm holy. And to raise your children, Travis and Saxon, I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's been a long time. You are holy. You are holy. The Holy. And they make me worry about every other spelling of that word, that is for sure. As I approached the podium on the day I was nominated to be speaker, someone said to me, "Your parents would be..." Oh, I already read that. They raised me to be holy. Holy didn't mean kneeling down all the time and praying. It meant kindness towards others, and again, as speaker, policies that promote fairness and respect. I never thought about it in terms of my being in elected office. What a blessing, Nancy Pelosi. What a blessing to be able to think of yourself as holy. What a wonderful blessing. Every woman today, that's what I wish upon you. Every child, I wish upon you that you think of yourself as holy, because as creatures of God, we absolutely are. Nancy Pelosi, I remember reading this a long time ago, and I knew that was the reason why you stuck in my heart all these years, was because I read this about you. My Catholicism has always been a source of strength for me. I pray a lot. I pray for my colleagues, Democrats and Republicans, and for my adversaries, because I want to be respectful of where they're coming from on issues, even though I don't think they're very charitable in some of their public policy. Yeah, and batting her husband on the head. Are you kidding me? Which is what that person promised. What's his good-looking name? McCarthy. It's what he promised and delivered, didn't he? And delivered on. I was a teenager when President Kennedy was running for office, and I witnessed the anti-Catholicism he faced. One of my inspirations is President Kennedy's speech in Texas when he spoke to a conference of Protestant ministers. He said, "Because I am a Catholic and no Catholic has ever been elected president, the real issues in this campaign have been obscured, perhaps deliberately. So it is apparently necessary for me to state once again, not what kind of church I believe in, for that should be important only to me, but what kind of America I believe in." And I'm pretty sure I've been tooting my horn pretty well on that. And if you don't get it and you're still investigating me, it's because you're Karen. It was elevating. He suffered from anti-Catholicism, and because of him, other people didn't have to. The taboo was broken. I keep a picture of him in my office. The priest in my office never denied communion in our parish to pro-choice politicians. Some of my colleagues have felt that pain a lot more deeply because in their diocese and in their churches, priests did deny pro-choice members the sacraments. I came from a Catholic family that wasn't pro-choice. They didn't share my view, but they respected it. They wished I wasn't so open about it. We were raised to believe that everyone had a free will and he or she was responsible for his or her own decisions. Yeah, right, MFers in the Republican Party. What the hell's the matter with you? Take responsibility, don't take responsibility. F you, because you sure as hell don't take responsibility for kids at all. For me, that outlook was very consistent with women having the right to choose. We go to church and we respect it. And that's why people disrespect me too. Absolutely, that's the reason why. Although those MF or white supremacists don't give a shit one way or the other. They just disrespect, period. We go to church and we respect it. They don't even respect one another. They don't respect their women for sure, batting them in the nose, getting a shortcake, whatever, all over their face look. Are you kidding me? We go to church and we respect it for what it is to us. We don't make judgments about everything that it does. The pedophile scandal was a major sorrow for many of us, and I have some very strong views about the church and how it dealt with that. But that was the people in the church, as far as I'm concerned. They were not important enough to turn me away from the church. They eventually became important enough. I was said exactly those words, and then that became important enough to turn away from the church because it wasn't important enough to the church to do something about. Don't even let me go into cardinal law and that he has been awarded with a princely title in Rome. It is just appalling. I cannot deal with that, so I don't. But I guess it's my family background of just saying, you don't attack the church. That's just the way it is. It's too ingrained, and I'm too old, so you just go with what you believe, what the church means to you. I couldn't go to church anymore, though. It was just, I wasn't getting anything out of church either. So why continue to go to a Catholic church? And how do you go to a different church and call yourself Catholic? It was non-denominational. I still did. It is very interesting. I feel like I really have broken from the Catholic Church. But that mainly has a lot to do with the people that have continued to be criminals in the Catholic Church and also hide a lot of things. I mean, locally, personally, no Catholic person has come out in defense of me that I have heard. And from what I know, has come out and publicly attacked me. So, or have definitely sided with white supremacists against me. Diana Diffenderfer, right off the bat. What kind of body is that, Diana, anyway? Your needle straight hair. And your chip on your shoulder that's as big as your tits. I think about heaven a good deal the older I get. Heaven is your reward for living a good life. That is to say, good life is its own reward. I don't think we'll be floating around on clouds, but I do subscribe to Pascal's wager, which says that you might as well live a good life just in case there's something after. There could be something very spiritual that happens after death. I used to when I was young. I think that's a sort of an immature way of looking at things. I had somebody was like I said about baptism just in case, but it was a joke, but it's not, but it is. It is. I mean, it's baptism, and it was symbolic for Jesus as well. It wasn't a command. So I think if you're doing it in any case, you're doing it in case. And as an infant, you don't even have an in case, right? Anyway, you know, it's a very narrow view to be, I think, to be so afraid of death. That's such a narrow view. We know that our life encompasses this much on a time scale. So that's all the importance God's creation has for the world? I don't think so. I don't believe that. I'm pretty sure, like I said, I'm a warrior. He has good use for me for a very, very long time. And I don't need to be Job to do it. Hell is the absence of the spirituality of a good life. Yeah, you motherfuckers, you're living in hell, you asshole cops. I don't think we're going to be fired. I don't think we're going to be fried on pitchforks. I go to church all over the country because I travel a great deal. In our cathedral in San Francisco, the Archbishop got a standing ovation when he spoke about eliminating all nuclear weapons from the face of the earth and stopping proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. So did our priest. So did our priest get a standing ovation. And from then on, it was always part of our petition to end the Cold War, to end the nuclear escalation. That was the word I was looking for. So we prayed as Catholics for that as a petition for decades. Decades we prayed for that. And our prayer was answered too, by the way. Not very timely, God, but whatever. I go to church, got it. In my church, there's a focus on the alleviation of poverty and kindness towards others. In other churches throughout the country, you have the non-negotiables: stem cell research, women's right to choose, cloning, euthanasia, and gay marriage. There's great time spent on those issues instead of on what is the fundamental principle of our faith. Right, and all those issues are divisive. It's like, oh, you're not us, you're not us, you're not us. You know what? Nobody wants to be you. Who do you think you are, judge and jury anyway? Kavanaugh and whatever that little other nonsense, non-relevant new, what's her name, Kathy Bates? I'm sorry, Kathy Bates. I think you're a great actor. I don't mean that. I'm trying to think of where she is in my life because she's there too. What I meant is like a Norman Bates opposite is what I meant by that. Anyway, too much of me, not enough of this. We're all part of the body of Christ, and so therefore everyone is worthy of respect. We have a responsibility if people are poor or sick to help them. I gave myself this book for Christmas, The Saint, Thus Saith the Lord, the revolutionary moral vision of Isaiah and Jeremiah by Richard Rubinstein. Interesting. The book discusses the tragedy of Hurricane Katrina, which is enough to bring tears to anybody who's awake at all. The consequences of corrupt, callous, and short-sighted government policies may not seem serious so long as the primary victims are poor and voiceless people. But those evils put the whole society at risk. Isaiah recognized that unjust government dissolves and demoralizes communities, leaving them unprotected. Amen, brother. That passage is not unlike what Pope Benedict XVI has in his first encyclical, which was released April 2006, called God is Love. What happened to him? He stepped down. First pope to step down. Why was he asked to step down? Hush, hush. But you know what I remember? I remember that the Vatican, reading weeks before Pope Benedict stepped down, that the Vatican was a free-for-all sex orgy all the time with boys. That's what I read. I read it. Another scandal coming up, Benedict stepped down. I'm just saying. That's what I read. Then it was gone. Gone. Couldn't find it again in the paper. Oh, really? You mean that they could hush hush stories from Google? They could do that? What? God is love. In it he says, any government that is not formed to promote justice is just a bunch of thieves. Benedict was quoting Augustine, who said that 16 centuries ago, and he was made a saint. He then went on to say, sometimes it's difficult to define justice, but in doing so, we must be aware of the danger of ethical blindness caused by the dazzling power of money and special interest. I quote that on the floor all the time. My colleagues are all used to it. Yeah, and their eyes glaze over with, their great efforts for reaching intellectual, I don't know, fill in the blank. I feel very close to Christ. If that's separate from the church, I don't know. What a remarkable and wonderful way to lead a life, to have Christ as your Savior. When people look at me askance for my faith, I think I have a gift. Totally relate, Nancy. There were some moments I didn't feel separate from the church, but I felt let down. In 1968, the Pope issued the encyclical humane vita on human life. I was having my fourth child in 4 years. I thought that there might be some understanding by the church. I had no complaint in terms of my own life. We could afford a big family and we had a loving situation, but there wasn't any understanding by the church for people honoring their own sense of responsibility and what they could handle with dignity. I remember being so optimistic that this encyclical was coming. I couldn't wait until it came. I ran for the papers. It was such a letdown. It was one of those moments where you say, I guess they've made their decision and the rest of us have to make ours. It was a missed opportunity for the church. I remember that. I was 3. I remember a discussion about it. I've always been pro-choice. To me, it's like saying, should we surrender our brains? I feel very comfortable with it. I'm constantly inspired by the work of Catholics in the community. In San Francisco, Father Floyd Lotito has helped up St. Anthony's dining room, which has served thousands of meals to the needy for over 40 years. Yeah, and then the government tried to do Meals on Wheels for them. Or no, not Meals on Wheels. I'm sorry. That's a good program. Sorry, good program. They tried to give them the criminal justice food. Feed them the insanity food and see what happens to them. Those pieces of shit. You know why? Because they were making so much, but they weren't feeding them because they had the commissaries. Just a shit system. Just Mike Bouchard squatting down and shitting on the conveyor belt. I'm constantly inspired by the work of Catholics in the community in San Francisco. I got it. All right, said it. I said to him one day, Father, why is it that you don't burn out? And he said, my parents raised me to believe that God loved poor people in a very special way, and therefore we have to treat them in a very special way. That doesn't really answer the question, though, does it? No burnout for me. I do get a little burnt out. I took some months off, didn't I? Yeah, after they handcuffed me, those motherfuckers, I sure did. That is really defeating, and they know it, Defeating of spirit. What kind of Christian would do that to a woman? Try and break her spirit. Huh, Greg Newsom and Pam Newsom? Trying to break a good woman's spirit. Who does that? Who does that? Evilness incarnate. That's who does it. Frank McCourt. Francis Frank McCourt, born August 19, 1930, is one of the master storytellers of American literature. Let's see. He received a Pulitzer Prize for his memoir, Angela's Ashes, which details his childhood as a poor Irish Catholic in Limerick. I want to read that because I'm thinking Irish Catholics are behind this stuff that's going on. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, I don't want to stereotype this. What I'm saying is there's an awful lot of angry Catholics, and anger brings in the Irish. They know it. What do they think? We don't know why their hair's on fire? God. I can't stereotype. I'm not stereotyping. I'm sorry. I am stereotyping. I'm sorry. I apologize. I really do. I don't mean to do that. I have had a question in the back of my mind that I spoke publicly just now about. That's an authentic question. What's going on with Irish Catholics in the Catholic Church? Because I said it in my text to my son. You didn't do anything about Boston, and that sounds like a whole bunch of Irish Catholics to me. Father Francis McCourt. I don't know. Cardinal law. I don't know. I can say it like that. It makes it sound like it's Irish Catholic. That's what I'm saying. Are involved in something. The church. There is Francis McCourt. So he may not be with us any longer since he was born 95 years ago, but he could be. Oh, here's his first words. Ready? Hell is a dark place. The temperature is about 1,000,000 degrees. The walls are 1,000,000 miles thick, and you're there for eternity. Well, he is a storyteller, isn't he? As little kids, we tried to wrap our minds over eternity, and the priest would say, imagine a bird goes to a mountain 1,000,000 miles high and 1,000,000 miles wide. Once every 1,000,000 years, he takes a little grain of sand to another place. Then in 1,000,000 years, he comes back and takes another grain of sand. He's creating this mountain 1,000,000 miles high and 1,000,000 miles wide. Imagine the bird going back and forth creating this mountain. That's eternity. Sounds like hell. We could almost grasp that, the image of the mountain growing in 1,000,000 years, but that would have been a very tired bird. I'm not getting it yet. Every priest must have been trained in suffering and horror. Yeah, that I get. Heaven, on the other hand, is a milky place. God is sitting on his throne, and the Virgin Mary is to his right. Now his son is to his right. St. Joseph and the archangels Michael and Gabriel are there, but there's nothing happening. We were told the rewards for leading a good and virtuous life are to stand before the throne of God, gazing on his divine countenance in all wonder and reverence for all eternity, which sounds a bit like the bird. Now, I believe that when you die, there's nothing, oblivion and memories. If we could prove conclusively that your life ends with your last breath, it would change the whole course of history. Nobody would give a shit if there's no afterlife. One day I piped up in class. We were preparing for confirmation and had gone through the 7 deadly sins. There were times when I was nauseatingly goody-goody. So I said, "Sir, I know the first deadly sin." He said, "Oh, you do? What's the first deadly sin?" I said, "It's sloth." He said, "Is that right?" And I replied, "Yes, because if you commit sloth, you're doing nothing. And if you're doing nothing, you can't be committing the other deadly sins." That led to a thrashing around the room for thinking. A thrashing for thinking. You didn't ask questions in class, but we were little amateur theologians on the schoolyard. We would talk about the Trinity and wonder what a virgin was. We were 13 or 14 when we discovered anything about sex, because anything to do with the flesh was the forbidden subject. My mother would never admit to anything natural happened. Angels delivered us. We knew not to ask questions. We had a very unhealthy relationship with girls. When I became a teacher, I saw the ease among boys and girls in high school. I envied them. When I did meet women, I didn't know what to say to them. I just like leaping on them. That's it. Sex. It took 3 marriages before I reached a plateau of health. Pedophilia was common in Ireland. This priest came to our school and invited us to join the Holy Ghost Fathers as missionaries in Kenya. He said if anybody was interested, he'd give us a private appointment. He said he had to examine me physically and that I had to lie on his lap, and he would put his ear on my chest and his hand would wander. I said, "I have to leave." I was 11 or 12 and ashamed. I knew what happened to other kids in the class. I didn't know how far he went with them, and nobody was saying anything. It was fear that made me leave, because I couldn't reconcile the collar with the groping hands. In Ireland, they were sick. They went for boys. Maybe they thought the girls would spill the beans faster. I still can't figure out faith, because I suppose I had it, and then I realized I didn't have it. It was imposed on me. I came to New York and started going about in a new way. Saturday night bars, and Sunday morning I would be hungover, sleeping with a woman. I wouldn't go to Mass, and the guilt accumulated. It was also fear. What if I die tonight? I would go to hell, but it dissipates after a while. I saw the antics of the church and began to think more and more about the contradictions. I began to find a great lack of love and too much fear in the Irish Catholic Church especially. It was inconsistent, because love is the central theme of Catholicism. I didn't find it, and I had to go another more human direction. I feel more and more aware of the mystery, and I am reconciled to the oblivion that is coming. I see no proof of anything else if it is a matter of faith. I admire people who have faith in God. It must be a great comfort to them, but I had to get out from under the fear and the guilt. All the religions are laid out like a great buffet, and I take what I want from each of them. Buddhism is the only religion, as far as I know, that never started a war. All the Buddhist priests committed in Vietnam, they immolated themselves. I'm not sure what that means, but I can guess. Sometimes I wish I could go back into teaching and tell the kids what I've discovered since. I wasn't put on this earth to be Irish or Catholic or a Jew or a Protestant. I was put here naked and everything was injected into me. Irish history was imposed on us. We were brainwashed and conditioned to believe that the English were villains, which they were to a certain extent. They never had teachers or priests who told us to think for ourselves. We were told what to think and how to feel. When I got older, I realized I had discarded what I didn't want. If you steal from your mother's purse, if you utter a curse, you tell that to your priest and your soul is wiped clean. Anybody who is a Catholic knows this. When you go to confession as a teenager, you walk out of church on air. Then you come over to America and people tell you to go to therapy. You just keep peeling the onion. It's a very witty vegetable. I'll put the onion on my tombstone. When I wrote Angela's Ashes, I thought I wrote a very mild book. My brother said, you pulled your punches. I could have gone deeper into it. You have to know you can go so far before people become disgusted. I could have, for instance, described the lavatory that was outside of our house, which was used by the whole lane. People would empty everything into this lavatory, and because of this, I got typhoid fever. I could have gone into greater detail about the rats and vermin in there. I could have described what it was like in the morning getting up. You were cold, damp, and miserable, but you have to use your judgment. I didn't think much about what I was revealing. I thought I revealed very little. Certain people who were the guardians of Limerick's virtue said I shamed the city. I didn't think much about what I was My mother used to say, forget about Limerick. You're in America now. I couldn't forget. As a teacher, I saw things in my classroom. I saw kids who were subject to incestuous abuse by their fathers, kids who were hungry, and kids on drugs. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. You son of a bitches calling this the place for hopes and dreams. You son of a bitches doing that to our kids. The Catholic Church. I think that's the reason why I haven't been able to get over it. Honestly, something like this, one of them in all of these great stories and great perspectives that give me paradigm shifts about the Catholic Church, you give me one of these and I find no excuse. I find no excuse. I think the one organization that kept us alive in Limerick was the St. Vincent de Paul Society. If this society had not existed, we would have had no place to go to get tea, bread, sugar, and flour. Our mother would have had to put us in an orphanage. So that's the contradiction of our faith, isn't it? Of the Catholic faith, isn't it? It does service the poor. It sure does service the poor. But it does allow for power and money in places that it doesn't belong. It doesn't belong in the church, period. What you find in institutions is that there are jokes that mimic the sergeants, the officers, the whole bureaucracy in prisons, hospitals, and schools. Kids are always mimicking. That's what keeps you going in those soulless organizations. And poverty is a kind of institution. You are down in some slum, and if you don't have a sense of humor, you don't last. Kids know when they have a sourpuss kid, and that's the only one they pick on. Catholicism was, whatever it is, a rich experience. I'm glad that I've reached this stage in my life where I'm able to look back, not with anger, but with almost gratitude for the experiences I had. Maybe I was damaged by it for a long time. We all were, but I can make use of it, and that's the gift. A lot of my contemporaries have been damaged badly. They would go off to England and become alcoholics. That was the outcome of our backdrop, the alcoholism and the despair. That is the truth. And then you come to America for therapy, right? Exactly what he said. But how many alcoholics I know, and how much money. Alcoholics Anonymous is definitely an unbelievable program, right? With a consistent message that you have to believe in something that is higher than yourself. I think it really renewed my faith when I had to go to those meetings, when I was forced to go to those meetings. I really think it was a great experience, an unbelievable paradigm shift experience for me. But I'm not an alcoholic, and it is very hard for me to relate to that lifestyle other than by some of those things that I read like that just remind me of what an unfortunate, despairing minority that is. But also, as a therapist, reminds me that these wounds of alcoholics, I mean, I heard it around the table over and over again. The same sort of stories that just could not be told out loud. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. I am here in the classroom. Couldn't be told out loud. You couldn't hear the whole story. You knew that the wounds were deep, is what I mean. And no, you knew there was a story behind the story, but the story at the table was already very deep. Wounds of alcoholics are just crazy deep. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. We are here on day 180 of the classroom, and that was 2 excerpts from the book Being Catholic Now. We are going through 37 different perspectives on what it's like to be Catholic now. Back in, I think, 2008 was when I think this book was published. Thanks for joining me. I will see you here tomorrow as we just got really rolling. We get rolling really fast, I think, in our classroom, which is what I really like. So really rolling, we've taken off on day 1 of our 3 days on before our 4 days off, giving you something to think about in the classroom, day 180. Thanks.